Next tonight, how coronavirus has turned lives upside down in one of our most deprived inner city neighbourhoods, and how people are rallying round to try and get through it. Tonight, we're taking a detailed look at how St Anne's in Nottingham has been pretty much in the eye of the storm. The jobs lost, the personal struggles, and indeed how the community's fighting back. All those stories in just a moment. First, though, let's cross to the Chase Neighbourhood Centre and our social affairs correspondent, Jeremy Bull. Good evening, Jeremy.
Yeah, good evening. And I think it's the little details that really paint a picture here. When this centre had to close during lockdown, there were so many people who were so desperate for help that they were actually queuing outside here to get advice through that window there. Now, as you know, there's been a huge amount of emergency support from the government. The furlough scheme, for instance, has protected a lot of jobs. That's due to come to an end very shortly. There's also been a ban on evictions. That ban came to an end yesterday. There is also another side to all this, a real Blitz Spirit there's been here in St Anne's. Some people have told me this has actually created opportunities too. And this is the story of how just one community has been changed by this pandemic. Pulling together after months apart, teenage volunteers helping staff here at the community recording studio.
I love graffiti artists, but they are very messy.
The newest graffiti is a sign of the times. This clear-up's the first time they've been back since the centre shut down in March.
During the COVID-19, I got diagnosed with a personality disorder. So being diagnosed with something that's a bit scary because you don't really know about it as much. Being locked in the house all the time doesn't help your mental health either. I'll come to the studio and I'll make music, but not being able to do that is taking away some of the freedom.
This is the studio that's been supported by Prince Harry, who came back again and again in the years before the pandemic. He was helping Trevor Rose to build a hub of creativity, but lockdown meant all that hard work had to move online instead.
When we're sat down, you find out sometimes the stresses that people go through, all the talent, the gifts, the ideas. You can feel the difference it makes talking through a screen. Loss of identity, the loss of expression. We need places where people can go to talk, to relieve themselves from the stress.
But stress doesn't begin to describe what 19-year-old Sanchez has been through. He lost his job because of lockdown. Then he was kicked out of his rented home. That's despite a ban on evictions during the coronavirus crisis.
I had a kid on the way at the time. I had nowhere to go. It was probably one of the worst days I've ever had in my life, to be fair, because I've never felt my life just go down the drain like that. Absolutely horrific. It's just like, I've worked all of this hard for nothing. Absolute rock bottom. I felt like I was just put it in the system, tune up and spat right back out of it.
They're not tea bags, they're hot chocolate pods. No.
And demand's been soaring here at the St Anne's Food Bank. But this is a community that's rallied round.
Oh, when we asked for donations for clothes, it went completely mad. We had so many donations of clothes, it was fantastic, but we ran out of space.
What do you want, Derek? Napoli or?
Helping out with their deliveries, a group of volunteers who've been furloughed from a local casino.
Makes you feel like you've done something useful. I've had one lady in tears said she don't know what she'd do if this place wasn't good and we weren't delivering. I probably don't take people for granted as much as what I used to. It's been a massive eye-opener, you know, especially when there's young children involved. They get a food parcel and think it's Christmas already.
We've already got a few people that have sort of thought, I've got to cut my expenses, I'll get rid of my mobile phone. But a mobile phone, you need to look for work, you need to contact people. We know that some people are getting into that corner so that they can hook up to our Wi-Fi and get themselves sorted out with debts, your overdraft, your benefits. Those phone calls take a long time sometimes. And we all know we listen to music, but if you haven't got any credit.
And just how much pressure are people going to be under, do you think?
I think everybody's frightened about something in the future, whether they're going to have work, whether they'll be able to go out, whether they're going to be safe. If they can't see a future, there'll be a massive decrease in hope.
The real challenge is how to tackle that in an area where deprivation was already rife before the pandemic began. Sanchez turned to his old mentor here at the Nottingham School of Boxing. They found him a hostel. They're trying to get him another job, and his life's already starting to look brighter. His girlfriend's just had their baby.
I was starstruck. As soon as I seen him, I instantly fell in love with him. So obviously I wanted to get a job so I could get a house and we could all be a family together and hopefully have a good future bringing them up.
We had one chap who came to us, I don't know what I'm going to do, and when we offered him a little bit of help in the shape of a food parcel, he started crying because we were being kind to him.
Being kind is important here at the studio too. For some young people, they're like a family. And here they've tried to use lockdown to create some new opportunities.
It seems weird saying it's been a good lockdown, but you know what, I've used it to my advantage. I've been networking and everyone's been in their house and everyone's been available on the internet, so I've been able to put out stuff and reach out to a lot of people in my field.
I've been homeschooling my youngest, and that's amazing. I mean, I know what pronouns are. You know, I never knew what a pronoun was before. Gets no better than that. You know what, I would like to start a small school here.
We have to stay positive, you know, and I think this lockdown has given us a little bit of time for ourselves to reflect on where we're at. You know what I mean? And it's been good in that sense, you know what I mean?
And this pandemic's been a time they'll never forget, but it's far from over.
So what does the future hold? Let's speak to Debbie Webster, who's in charge of the St Anne's Advice Centre. Debbie, thanks so much for having us there and for speaking to us. Now, as Jeremy said, the ban on evictions, that ended yesterday. Furlough's just got a few more weeks to run. How do you see the future for the people you help?
Well, I'm really fearful for the future. We do support people with their benefit queries and claims, and we also support people who've got debts, multiple debts or priority debts. But during the pandemic, the sort of emergency measures the government put in place really gave people that breathing space, if you like, to sort of concentrate on the pandemic and sort of fighting that issue. Now these emergency measures are going to be lifted, I am very, very concerned about the level of demand we're going to see in the area. We're already seeing a massive increase since the 1st of September.
You know, and Sally said in Jeremy's report that if people don't have a future, then there'll be a massive decrease in hope. Do you believe that too?
I do believe that, and I think that that's really sad, because I think that initially when this all happened, people accepted the fact they had to go into lockdown, had to isolate, knew they were fighting the pandemic and felt that we were all in this together. But I think over the time, the discrepancies between some of the restrictions on some people and not others have really sort of exposed the system that we're in at the minute. So I do think for people in the communities like this, they're very demotivated and feel isolated and alone.
And that's the next thing I was going to ask you, how you feel that the people you speak to every day have coped with all of this mentally.
I think people have coped remarkably well. However, a lot of the people that we see do have mental health issues. If you're living in poverty and hardship and you haven't got enough food to eat, then it's going to cause you a lot of mental anguish. And I think it's very different if you got some sort of money or some sort of better living conditions in terms of like a bigger house, a garden, money to spend on some DIY projects that you've not done for a few months. It's very difficult when you're living in poverty and hardship.
It's certainly is. Debbie, thank you so much for speaking to us, Debbie Webster there. And let's just have a final word then with our social affairs correspondent, Jeremy Ball. Jeremy, I know that you've been talking to people in St Anne's, you've been putting that together for a few weeks. What are you taking away from the last few weeks that you've been there?
Well, I mean, this pandemic's been challenging for all of us, hasn't it? But when you do spend time in an area like this, I think you realise just how much harder it's been in places like this. And we're not just talking about the financial toll. We know the virus has claimed far more lives in the most deprived communities. Inner city areas like this one, as well as the former mining areas in the East Midlands, some of the outer estates as well. And I think the really big question now, Anne, is what's going to happen over the next few months.
Indeed. Jeremy, thank you. And big thanks to Debbie as well. Thank you.